Hello, welcome to Flutter Heroes The Extra. My name is Lucy James and I work with Synesthesia Events. 2 weeks ago, it was my pleasure to welcome hundreds of Flutter developers to Flutter Heroes hosted here in Turin. And this morning, we're having another quick presentation just to really carry on the Flutter upskilling. This morning, I'm joined by two tech experts from Technogym, Andrea and Mirko. Good morning.
Hi guys,
Hello, everyone.
How
nice
are you?
seeing you again. Well, I'm great today.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for being able to join us for this presentation.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
It's a pleasure for us to be here.
Thank you. And we saw each other 2 weeks ago at Flutter Heroes. You guys had a brilliant stand with your equipment and showing the technology and how it works together. How was Flutter Heroes for you guys?
Well, it was a great opportunity to meet new people and enlarge our networking community of Flutter developers, knowing about their experiences, the technologies they use, and to listen to very interesting talks.
Brilliant. Andrea?
Yes, I mean, agree with what Mirko says, and I think that it was a very beautiful event with a lot of very interesting speech.
Excellent. And as you say, there were some really interesting presentations there. I hope you had the chance to see some of them. Is there anything specific that you saw or heard or learned on site at Flutter Heroes that you've been like putting into practice since you left the event?
Well, I literally fell in love with Widgetbook and I immediately started playing with it on the train back home. So I look forward to putting into practice and use it actively on our projects.
Excellent. Andrea?
I'm again in agree with what say Mirko because we are together to see the speech of
Okay.
Widgetbook, and I think that was a really good technology, and I think that we will use it inside our design system.
Excellent. Well, this morning you're going to be sharing your tech tips with our lovely audience. So guys, we're going to roll a quick intro and then it's over to you for your presentation.
Thank you.
So, hi guys. Today we're gonna talk about GoRouter and Firebase integration. How many times have you been requested by your editors or PMs to implement the support for navigating to a specific page after a push notification, or maybe a new dynamic link to use inside an email? This talk will cover how to use GoRouter and Firebase tools to achieve a single implementation to solve these problems once and for all without any new development each time. We'll do that using Firebase authentication, Crashlytics, dynamic links, Firebase messaging, and remote config. We won't cover how to create and configure a Firebase project here. But first, a quick GoRouter recap. GoRouter is a declarative navigation package that uses Flutter Router API, aka Navigator 2.0, to implement a URL-based navigation inside your Firebase, your Flutter project. In this talk, we'll take for granted that you know the basics of GoRouter usage, such as declaring routes and navigating using the Go method. We'll be using GoRouter Builder that allows us to use type-safe routes instead of using string-based URLs. But why GoRouter Builder, you may ask? Say you have a route defined like this: my path, parameter, query parameter, and a value. To navigate to it, you put your parameters in it and use the GoRouter of context Go method. This kind of navigation is prone to errors. The developer needs to know the route full path. The developer needs to know each parameter name. The developer needs to know each parameter value type. Using a router builder, we can achieve the same results by creating a new class and call a class method, just as simple as that. To achieve this, we have to use GoRouter Builder, typed GoRoot annotation, and GoRoot data class. By extending the GoRoot data class with typed GoRoot annotation, we're telling Build Runner to generate code that makes navigation painless. Inside such a class, we can define by convention path parameters, non-nullable ones, and query parameters, the nullable ones. GoRouter Builder will take care of encoding and decoding them. Now I'll show you how we configured GoRouter inside an app. This is a simple project we created to show you the power of GoRouter and Firebase integration with the least complexity possible. The project structure is organized in folders, several of them. The components one with basic widgets used to run the app, the models one with classes modeling our app data, the pages one with our pages implementation, the repo one containing all some data used inside our app, the routing one containing all the routing logic, and the service one containing our Firebase integration. Let's start from this module here. Here we can find the router configuration. We put our GoRouter instance inside a singleton class. This way, we can always use it to navigate somewhere, even if we don't have a context to use. To initialize GoRouter, we provide an initial route in here. We add a list of routes in here. Our routes are defined inside the routes directory, this one, which is separated in two modules. Out routes, the ones accessible by logged out users, so the login page and registration page. The home routes containing the routes accessible only by logged in users, so all the content of our apps. We used the type GoRouter annotation to describe our routes tree. So you can see here home, a subroute profile, editor page, album ID, and a not found page. Now I'll show you some navigation. This is the console log of our running application here. As you can see, by navigating inside our app, we see some logs, some navigation logs. That tells me I am going to some specific pages in here. Album pages with the album ID, the list of songs, and so on. But let's go to the next topic now. Firebase authentication. In this section, we'll be seeing how to integrate Firebase authentication to redirect our app navigation from non-authenticated routes to authenticated routes. We won't be seeing how to configure it on Firebase console, and we'll be using Firebase UI auth Flutter package to integrate authentication element and API calls. To integrate Firebase auth with GoRouter, we're gonna need three main GoRouter features. The refresh listenable, which allows GoRouter to listen to any notification from a listenable object and refresh its navigation state. Our app routes, a redirect function which can block navigation to specific routes, protecting them, or automatically redirect the navigation flow without any function being called programmatically. But how does this work? Firebase auth provides a stream of events that occurs whenever the user auth state changes, that is, the user logs in or out. We can translate these events stream into a change notifier, which is a listenable class, and call it auth service. We'll make this class a singleton to have a single reference to it throughout our app lifetime, and we'll provide it with a simple getter that will tell us if the user is logged in or not. We can then use our auth service inside our redirect function to change the current route according to the user auth state, thus protecting our app routes. Here you can see we use that singleton and read the logged in flag. Now I'll show you how to configure authentication redirect. Okay, let's rerun our application. Okay. First, we'll take a look at our out service implementation, which is in here. We decided to centralize here the list of authentication providers to use inside a project, this in particular. In this case, we'll be using only a simple email authentication provider. Let's see how our authentication page in here. Well, as you can see, this is a simple page with no logic inside whatsoever. We just use the Firebase UI out widget, this one, login view, without performing any explicit navigation. So now I can log in to my account in here. And we can see on GoRouter logs that after logging in, GoRouter automatically redirects us to the homepage of our app. Here we can see our profile page also. Now let's get back to the next topic. Crashlytics. How many times did you happen to find a bug that's difficult to reproduce? And how many times did you end up finding out it only happened for a specific navigation sequence, or maybe just after opening a specific entity instance? Here, we'll see how to make this kind of bug investigation easier. First of all, we'll configure Firebase Crashlytics to be called whenever Flutter or platform error occurs, by doing so in the main function. Since GoRouter is a change notifier, we can register a listener function to its change events, that is, when its routing configuration changes. This allows us to register the navigation log that led to a specific bug and thus helping us debugging it in the future. Let's see it in action. Well, yesterday I've been told by some users that this app crashes when opening an album page. Let's see what we can do. Yeah. Well, let me just navigate to some albums. Everything's fine with Michael Jackson. With AC/DC, everything's fine. Same with Queen. Same with Gorillaz. Let me check if I can find something on Crashlytics. Well, actually, there's a crash report in here, but let's see why this happened. Let's see some logs. Well, there's a navigation log in here. This album in particular. Same in here. The crash happens whenever this album is opened. Well, that's a specific album, actually. That's the Crow album in here, Reop. And there's the bug. Yeah, it only happens with it. Let's see why. Let's open the stack trace. The bug is in our album repository, fetch album by ID. This method here seems not to find that at all, but it should be in here. So let's see where it's called in here. I forgot to add my Crow albums list. Now it's working. So that was it. We managed to find the bug using the navigation logs on Crashlytics dashboard. Let's get back to the next topic though. Here we'll see how to use the same URL pattern with Firebase dynamic links. For this integration, we created the usual singleton we all love. We also added a completer object and a getter to get its linked future, We'll see later on how we use it. We added a nullable URI, mapping a possible initial route if the app was launched by opening a dynamic link. But now let's dive into the initialization process. In here, our service class constructor calls an async method called _init. We want it to be private, so it can be called only during the initialization process. The first thing we do inside this method is to check whether there's an initial link or not in here. If so, we map it into a new URI object and add a new scheme, this one in particular, dynamic link scheme. This is handy because it can help tracking down on Crashlytics any problem that might emerge at accessing a specific page through a dynamic link, for example, wrong state initialization from remote data, etc. Finally, we register a callback to be executed each time a new dynamic link is opened and the app is in background. Then we complete a completer so that every entity that needs to wait for dynamic link service to be initialized can go on with its work. In this callback function, we manipulate the link as previously done for the initial link, and then we navigate using our GoRouter instance. Finally, in the main function, we wait for dynamic link service to complete its initialization before running our app. This way, GoRouter can choose its initial route properly. Now we'll show you some code and a little demo. In here. So, let me just... So let's take a look at the dynamic link service module. In here, we find the same code I showed you on the slide, with the addition of this function here, get dynamic link from location. This is used to create a dynamic link given a go route location in the app. Let's see how we use it. In the album page, for example, where is it here? In the album page, we have a share button, this one here. Let me open the app. We have a share button, this one. And in this button on press callback, we call dynamic link service get dynamic link from location in here. And we pass the current go route location. Then it creates a dynamic link and set it into our device clipboard. So we can share it with our friends and so on. Like this. Let me just go back before opening it. As you might notice in here, the navigation animation is different than the usual navigation we have inside our app. But how did we do that? Well, as I told you before, when we open a dynamic link, we set a different scheme. We use that inside our GoRoute data class to choose which animation to perform on opening that page from there. And so we can decide the Cupertino page animation instead of the material page animation. But do you remember when I told you about not implementing any new code for supporting a navigation with push notification or dynamic link requested by the PMs or editors? We can achieve it in here. We created this specific editor menu with a simple switch. This switch will put an overlay on top of your app, always showing the current location. It's not limited to it. It can also copy the dynamic link of that location into your clipboard, like that. You can then copy it in here, paste it in your preferred editor or stuff like that, and opening it. Easy. Now we're midway on our app Firebase GoRouter journey, and I'll leave you guys in good hands with Andrea. Here you go, Andrea.
Thank you, Mirko. Now let's talk about Firebase Cloud Messaging and GoRouter integration with navigation action. First of all, we need to start listening the Firebase messaging on message and on message opened up. The first one is used for foreground notification, and the second one is for background notification. In this implementation, we have added a isForeground flag to our notification callback. In this way, we are able to distinguish the handling of the two messages inside the push notification handler. This is the structure of our example notification. In the body section, we have added two custom parameters. The first one is the action that is used in the push notification handler to identify the purpose of this notification, and the route that identifies the respective path and the query parameter where the user should be taken when tapped on the push notification. Let's go over on how to manage the notification. This is the method that will take care of it. Let's focus on what happens in the case we are trying to manage notification when the app is in background. We need to retrieve the respective action and check that it's of type navigation. After that, we check that our route parameter is different from null. And if it's false, we do nothing. If it's true, we can build the respective navigation URI, parsing the route field value, and proceed with the navigation. But what's this? As you can see, the parse URI, we have replaced the schema with the one dedicated to notification. But why we do this? As we do with the dynamic link, with this trick, we can always know where this navigation started from and eventually do dedicated operation. For example, in some case, we don't want the classic page transition, and instead we want a model. In this way, we can check from where the push notification request is arrived, and if it's from a push notification, we open the page with a specific transition, like we see before with the dynamic link. I would also like to tell you a suggestion, as we had to solve this problem in the past. The scheme constant needs to be in lowercase because the URI instance will normalize it. For example, if you are using a camel case naming convention for the constant, and in the build function of your GoRoute data, you do the comparison of the two strings, the check will fail. Let's see what happened with a notification like this one. As I said before, the action must be navigation, and that's correct. And the route parameter must be valued, and that's also correct. The navigation to the destination route will then be started. But if the requested path doesn't exist, or if the album is not available in the repository, in this case, the path exists, and we are in the way to build our destination route. But first, we need to check if the corresponding path parameter ID, that is the album ID that we want to open, exists in our repository. All this operation can be done within the redirect method inside the GoRoute data object. We just have to override it. So we proceed by checking if an album exists with the ID specified in the path. If it exists, we can return null and then proceed to desired destination. If the album does not exist, instead we send the user to the data not found page with the correct entity. In this case, it's album. Now let's see some coding. So this is the project, and you have already seen a quick overview of the structure with Mirko. So let's start to build our application. In the meantime, we can see a really fast overview of the push notification handler. This is a very simple widget that takes a child and build that child, but in the meanwhile can handle push notification. This method take a remote message and a isForeground flag. We can check the isForeground flag to manage a foreground notification or to navigate directly to the push notification. The navigate push notification method is the one that we have seen on the slide. So we take the action from the message. We then check that the action is of type navigation. We then check the route that is different from null. If it's different, we can parse the route and then go directly to the location. The show foreground notification is a very simple overlay that show us the foreground notification with our message title and our message body. And if we tap on it, we can navigate directly to the page. Now, let's see this simple Python script to send the notification. We have imported the Firebase admin library. We have create a credential variable that take the certificate from the JSON that we have downloaded from the Firebase console. We then initialize the Firebase admin library with the credential, and then we need the device token. So let's go back to our debug console and let's see if we have it in the log. So it's here. We have our push notification service log. This is our token, so we can copy it and paste inside our script. After that, we have three different types of notification. We have the album not found notification, the album within the repository, and the path not available. Let's start with the album not found notification. As we can see, we have a title, a body, and then inside the data object, we have our action, that is navigation, and it's correct, and our route. In this case, the path is correct, so it's /home/album, but this ID, I know that is not available in our repository. So let's try this notification. So let's go to the terminal and send our notification. So the notification is arrived. I have tapped on it, and the page not found with the album entity is open. So we can see that our redirect inside our GoRouter object, it's working. We are in this case. So we are opening our not found page with the entity album. Let's go to the next case. So now we are trying to open a notification with an album that we know that exists. So /album /home/album/q01. So let's save. Let's try the notification with the app in background. So let's send the notification again. We have already received the notification. There is a new album. We press on it and we can see that we are redirected directly to our album page with the correct album with the ID that we have inserted inside our notification. We can see also that the navigation is our custom with our custom transition. So as Mirko says before, we have this check inside the build page that check if the URI scheme contains one of the two constants that we have initialized in our app, so the dynamic link scheme or our push notification scheme. In this case, we are in the push notification scheme case, so we are building our Cupertino page in a full screen dialog. So now we have X in the top left corner rather than the back arrow. So let's close the page and let's try our last scenario. So let's save our script. This is the case where the path is not available. The action is the correct one, so it's navigation, and the route is /home/song. So we know that this path doesn't exist in our route tree. So let's go back to our terminal and send the notification. Let's tap on it, and we can see that we are redirected directly to our page not found. That is always our not found page, but with the entity page. This case is managed inside the GoRouter instance. We can see here that we have our not found page with the entity page. This error builder is called each time a path does not exist and GoRouter don't know where to go. So in this case, we go to the not found page with the entity page. But we can also see that we have also a go home button. In this case, we have that button because in the not found page, we have added a check. If GoRouter can pop the page, there will be not that button. Otherwise, we have that button to go back home because this is the only page in this stack. So let's tap on Go Home and we come back to the home page of our application. Okay, let's go back to the slide and continue with the Firebase remote config. So now it's the turn of the last tool we will discuss today. That is Firebase remote config. For those who have never used it, Firebase remote config gives us the ability to create a custom parameter value that can be updated and delivered to users in real time, allowing us to tailor the behavior and appearance of up to different audience, devices, or locations. It's very useful for A/B testing, enable or disable some section of the app, or give users some superpower, as we shall see shortly. The configuration is very simple. In this example, we set the timeout for streaming data to 1 minute and the maximum age of cache data also to 1 minute. As you know, however, a connection problem is always just around the corner, so it's strongly recommended to also set default values that would always be available locally. There are many different configurations that can be used depending on the logic that may need in the app. In this case, we choose the solution number 1, describing the Firebase remote config documentation. Each time the app is started, the data will be fetched and activated. And this happens only if necessary, based on the minimum fetch interval parameter that we have set before in the configuration. This type of configuration is optimal for our needs, as we are not going to radically change the application UI, but only the presence of a menu within the profile page. As mentioned earlier, Firebase remote config gives us the possibility to enable or disable functionality for an individual or a group of users. In this case, the application profile screen, we are going to exclude the editor menu if the logged user does not have the superpower. But there is some possible hack. Some user with superpower could generate a dynamic link to the editing page. As Mirko showed us earlier, dynamic link can be generated for each route from the editing page. So a malicious user could distribute a dynamic link leading to the secret path. But the redirect is here to help us again. In the redirect method of the GoRouter data object dedicated to the editor page, we only need to check the bool fetched from the Firebase remote config, and that's it. Now the page will only be accessible if the user really has superpower. Otherwise, come back to the home page. Let's see an example. So right now, I'm logged with my user, and if I go to my profile screen, I can see that I don't have the editor menu that Mirko showed us earlier. We can also see that in the debug console, if we go to the initialization of the application, we can see all the data that is retrieved from the remote config. The last activated value has the editor superpower set to false. So let's go and activate it. So we can take our Firebase installation ID from our profile page. Now let's go to the Firebase console and go to remote config. We can see that here we have a configuration that is the editor superpower. So let's go to modify it, and we can edit our condition in the installation ID and add it after the Mirko installation ID. So we can save our condition. Now, let's go to our application. We can rebuild our application again. And let's see what app is logging on our console. So we can see that now the remote config service has fetched again our configuration because it's passed more than 1 minute from the last build. So now we have the editor superpower to true. And if we go to our profile page, we can see that we have our editor menu, we have the possibility to enable our overlay. That's all, and thank you everyone to listen our speech.
Sorry, thank you so much, Mirko. Thank you so much, Andrea. Thank you for your presentation. I know we've been waiting to hear, like, some of the nitty-gritty, the details behind this Technogym app. It looked like you were happy to be sharing the details as well at last.
Well, it
yes,
was
we love
project,
code.
Yeah, we love coding, and it was a project specifically written for this presentation, and we would like to share it with you all, guys. It's a public repository on GitHub.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much. I mean, we saw at Flutter Heroes, there was so much conversation, that openness and willingness of like sharing ideas, sharing, like you said, code and examples is what like builds a great community, isn't it?
Yes, indeed.
Yes.
And specifically the Firebase, the Flutter community, which is an open source tool. So everyone should be involved in maintaining it and give suggestions to it.
Brilliant. I know, well, completely. You're saying exactly what I was going to say, and which I agree with completely. Well, look, thank you so much. This has been live on YouTube, and we will be putting the recorded session on YouTube as well, and sharing it so that everyone can follow up and watch whenever they want. Thank you so much again for your participation, and look forward to working with you in the future on Flutter Heroes.
Same here.
Great.
Yes, I hope. Hi, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.